Hey, this is Dr. Kelly Cagle, and for season 3, we're doing things a little differently because we know that a healthy and happy dad and mom starts with a healthy and happy husband and wife. So I decided to bring along my husband, Josh, as co-host so we could share some real life stuff of the ways that we learn how to fight to make our marriage thrive. You are listening to season 3 of the Parenting IQ podcast, Learning to Fight. Welcome to the Parenting IQ podcast. We've got another episode today, and I'm excited to be talking about parenting today. And this is one of the things that you're probably thinking, what are you talking about? Like, we've had so many things that other things we fight about, but we wanted to get some of the core things in parenting that we can fight for, not against. And I'm over here with my co-host, Josh Cagle.
Yeah. Hi, guys. And just like what you're saying, we wanted to expound today. A lot of times we think about what are we fighting against when we're in this Learning How to Fight series. And just what you said, we're wanting to establish, wait a minute, parenting. These are things that we really want to be fighting for, right?
Mhm.
Parenting and the strength and the core of who we are as parents, how we operate as parents, what do we believe in as parents. And those are so many things that we want to make sure that we establish today, or at least touch on today as we go forward in our fighting.
Yeah, for sure. I think the first one is engagement. And I think that when you and I were talking about some of these areas that we could bring up, we were analyzing our own selves. And I know that I say this almost every week, but I work from home and then I homeschool the kids. And so sometimes it's really hard for me to differentiate that work mindset. Right. So, like, if I'm physically in my office, then that's one thing, and the kids know mom's working. But then whenever I step outside, a lot of times I haven't shut it off.
Yeah.
And juggling between that role of work mode, which never shuts off, at least for me personally, and then mom mode. Sometimes that engagement piece can be really difficult for me, and I'm just being honest.
Right. Well, I think it can be difficult for all of us. I was with Levi earlier today. He's 12, and we were going to Home Depot. And on the way to Home Depot, I could drive across the United States and not listen to any music or just be in my own thoughts. I don't know all the
I
time what I'm
always say that
thinking
you
about.
are the oldest soul. You're the oldest 38-year-old I know, like, soul
Thanks,
wise.
babe. I
Because
appreciate
you just
that.
like, yeah.
But so we're driving, and Levi's probably wanting to make sure that he listens to music, but he knows probably me.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't normally ask those things very often. And today he didn't. But anyways, we're driving there, and there's really not a whole lot going on. We're just kind of chilling, zombied out. And we get back in the car from Home Depot. He's like, why do I have to go? And I was like, son, you need to learn how to go and look for certain things and stuff. And so anyway, as we're headed back, okay, we started just strumming up some small talk of conversations, really about just, remembering when I was his age. I always try to joke with him sometimes, I remember when I was 11 years old, and he's like, Dad, I'm not 11, I'm 12, and I kind of rope him in, and we start talking about some things. But anyway, he made a comment today, and he said, I really like whenever we're together. He said, you really always make me want to talk. He said, when I'm driving with him to our Frisco to soccer, he really enjoys these conversations. He said, Mom, well, I don't really talk a lot with Mom. He said, we talk about a lot of things, maybe, but not maybe as deep. And I told him, I was like, well, Mom is a very, very she's the type of person that's going to answer some questions. You ask a question, she's going to give you the answer. Well, she might not be the one to strum up the conversation right out of the gate. That's why your conversation starters are a big deal.
That's exactly right.
But a lot of times we'll just kind of drive. We can be checked out, that disengagement. And just hearing this little boy, when we're in a 15-minute car ride, see this opportunity to be engaged. I think about so many times when we, not judging or anything, but we're in a restaurant and you're seeing parents and kids,
Yeah.
and everybody's on their own phones and stuff, and that's some cool stuff. There's things you can learn, but we have opportunities
Missing out the opportunity to
in
be.
18 years or less, to spend quality time with these kids.
Hmm.
And I think
So,
parents are a huge thing. This engagement's a huge thing we should
yeah,
fight for.
one of the really cool things that I read about, Dr. Leonard Sachs, he's a psychologist, and he's talking about with boys in particular, that boys don't want more words. Like they don't want to sit here and just have these lengthy conversations, like face to face, because they'll lose interest. They're really busy and they physically would rather be doing something else. However, using the moments when it's kind of like the unstructured moments, for example, car rides, the shoulder to shoulder communication with boys
Mhm.
is so important, because that is when it can really, and that's exactly what just happened with you and Levi. It wasn't this face to face, hey boys, sit down, we're gonna have this heart to heart.
Right.
Then it's like, man, you've got his attention for probably 5 minutes if you're lucky. Then he's
Mhm.
already drifting off thinking about something else. But whenever you're using that time shoulder to shoulder with boys, girls are different, because girls like to talk. Maybe I'm you're saying that I don't love to talk, but that's exactly what happens. I'm still in my work mindset, thinking,
Sure.
what do I need to get done over here once I get to Frisco, and all the things, because I get pulled in the middle of my day, right, to take him over there. And so my mind hasn't shifted yet. And I need to do better at that, because those are amazing opportunities that I can really take advantage of. And now I will say that out of the 3 car rides that I take him every week, one is really great, one is pointless, that we just listen to music, and then the other one is whatever, iffy. But what I'm trying to say is, girls are more willing to talk. They are more willing to come up, and this is research based. They're more willing to come in and sit with you and visit with you. So, parents, you can really take advantage of that. But if you're a parent of boys, be creative with that shoulder to shoulder communication, because that's when magic is going to happen, which is what you witnessed with Levi.
Yeah, and setting aside that time, because again, those strategies of learning how to fight. Well, if we're trying to learn how to fight for that engagement,
Mm-hmm.
it is going to take time.
Yep.
It's not going to happen in 15 seconds, just
Yeah.
as much as a relationship that we might have with a coworker or a new friend or anybody doesn't happen automatic.
Right.
It takes, even with our kids, even though they're our own kids,
Mm-hmm.
we can't take for granted that we're building trust with them every day.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the older they get, because there might be times when we have violated that trust, or there might be times when we have really hurt them. Maybe they didn't understand where we were coming from, or they were really wanting something and we told them no, and maybe didn't explain why
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. The
And
why
they're
is really
left in
important.
these bewilderment moments. And I think it's just very powerful for us to make sure that how we engage our children is very, very important. It
I
has to
love
be something we fight for.
I love what you just brought up, the why being really important. And I've been doing a better job at that lately, since we started homeschooling, really since, this summer, taking the time of bringing my kids alongside this learning journey. So I've been in the field of education for, gosh, I don't even know, 15 years, for a really long time. And so I've always been with kids and teaching, that teaching mindset. But now that it fully is on my shoulders, I've had this different transition in my mind of, I can really take advantage of all these moments. And one of the things that I have been really intentional about is telling them why. And sometimes I may not know, and if the answer is yes, and this is why. But what's really cool is whenever they can tell you why as well, that it's been something that you have previously discussed in the why.
Mm.
And then they will come back. And for example, I'll give you a perfect example. Last week was a really busy week. And one of the days, I think it was Monday, we didn't get any physical book work done, right? We typically have our structure that we go Monday through Thursday. We do the same thing, whatever. Well, that one day, it didn't happen. Something happened. It was just a busy day. And on the drive to Frisco, because the littles came along that time, I wanted to see, because I was looking for the learning that took place in all those moments that we were together, regardless of the books not being pulled out. And I just started asking them, boys, let's talk about some of the learning that took place today. And to hear Micah, who is 5, Titus, who is 7, and Levi, who is 12, to connect all the learning that happened without any bookwork blew my mind.
Wow.
Because it was a lot. They even brought up more things than I had thought about because I had a list that I was going to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just opened up the space and I let them talk. And it was so amazing to hear them connect learning, which is what we talk about all the time, that lifelong learning. I was like, man, even though I fail and I suck a lot of the time, that was a really rich moment in my mind that in my heart, I was like, okay, they're getting this.
Right. And it's things that we're going to cherish.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons why, as we highlight today, parental engagement with our children, what do we want? We're not here to be their best friend. We're here to be the person that when the world turns their back on them, or they feel abandoned or alone or whatever's going on in their minds, that they can always remember that, hey, there's a mom or a dad out there that I can come to and tell them or share with them anything that's going on. And we all, I think, as parents, want to be in that place. We
Yeah.
all want to be with our kids in the place when they're going through these maybe tough seasons or dark moments in their lives, that they can remember or come to mom and dad.
Can you share whenever you were in that men's group with several older men, when one of your guys said, hey, I've always told my son, do you remember that he can call me at any point?
Oh yeah.
Can you share that, please? I
There
love that.
there was a gentleman who spoke about one of his boys that, as he was getting into that teenager / partying scenes and stuff like that, he said, son, I want you to know that if you ever find yourself in a situation that you know you shouldn't be in, but you're there and you are looking for a way out, he said, you call me. I don't ever want you to, be drinking and driving, whatever
Mhm.
you might be
Yeah.
in the temptation in that moment to be doing. He said, you call me, I will come get you. I will never ask any question. I will never, condemn you, I guess, in that moment.
Mhm.
And there was one time in particular where he said that his son, took him up on that,
Mm.
and he did that very thing. And sure enough, through time, he never brought it up, but the boy did.
Mm. That's
Ended
awesome.
up sharing what went on in
Mhm.
that moment. And so I think with that engagement, you create this safe haven or
Yeah,
this
that's right.
safety net for your children, and that's what we want to make sure that we fight for as our parents or as parents, because life is messy, life's
Yeah.
tough.
Well, and moving on to our next one, which is disciplining the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you have established this relationship, for example, your friend that you just shared about, in that moment, he internally, there's no telling what he's battling right in his heart. Oh my gosh, just can't believe he did this. It violated the trust, all these boundaries that I've raised him better than this, whatever. You know that all these thoughts are just running through his head. But what did he do? He kept his word in that
Yeah.
moment. He really picked his battle super wisely right there, that he said, no, that's not the deal that I made with him. I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain. So that discipline might have taken place later.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But thinking of the relationship that through engagement you can establish, so that discipline is healthier.
Sure. Well, obviously, there's two thoughts to discipline. There's discipline in the penalty sense,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a discipline of correction.
Yeah.
And I think what we're after is correction, most of us as parents. Now, sometimes we get probably that's our last thing in our mind because there was an incident that just happened. The kids just tore off one of each other's arms. There is this discipline
So like it's my day to day.
we're not here to correct. We're here to enforce. And so I think, though, when we back away, true discipline is means of discipleship.
Yeah,
it's correction. It's an action leading someone into a right path.
Mm-hmm.
And so as parents, when we engage our kids, we then are basically spending the time to enhance our relationship so that if and when there are these moments of correction, we have that relationship, we have
Mm-hmm.
that trust, we have and not only in what we're saying, but through time, what our actions are speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
I think,
authority is a good word, and not in a
yeah,
power, right? This power structure, but you have gained authority to speak into their lives, to disciple them.
right. Yeah, no, I think authority is huge, and so as we use that authority, or as we are disciplining, we are fighting for those moments of, hey, we don't want you to fall down. We see something in you.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be fun to go through these tough moments or these tough lessons. How many of us like to be
Right.
disciplined, right?
Right.
Even as adults, when we're corrected or we're held accountable or whatever might
We
take
fail, which is
place,
all
we
the time, but
fail.
somebody calls us out.
I mean, that's why healthy friends, healthy coworkers, healthy marriages, it's good to have that accountability
Mm-hmm.
for each other. But as parents, and the reason why we want to fight for discipline is because we know that boundaries are healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy rules are ways to
Protect.
create protection and success. That is what we as parents want to fight for with our kids. So we're not worrying about, oh no, I'm going to be this massive sledgehammer where everybody's always fearful.
Yeah.
Now, I've grown up in a situation in my life where I didn't understand discipline
Mm-hmm.
in a correction
Mm.
mentality. It was just, in a you know
You felt like it was more punishment.
condemning
Mm-hmm.
punishment mentality. And I've grown, and I had to grow through that, right? My mom was really helpful in helping me understand why things happened and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, but I didn't see it in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important that our kids see it.
Yeah.
I remember a few times excuse me, talking to my middle boy Titus
Mm-hmm.
when he had done something wrong and he was going to need to get a spanking. And I told him, I was like, Titus, do you know why you're getting a spanking? He's like, no. I was like, oh,
The why?
really?
Here's the why again.
And so then you had to spend the moments like, how
Yeah.
do you not
Yeah.
know
Do
this?
you not
But
remember what you just did?
uh-huh. So, but again, listeners here, we care about you, we care about our parenting and how we can keep those relationships with our kids are so healthy and vital.
And you know what I think is super cool too is that even in this discipline, we have had to learn to find our own way to, in a healthy way, discipline our kids. And back in the day, Levi's our first. And so we tell him all the time, just like you always say, Jordan had it so easy. Jordan's your younger brother. Jordan
Mhm.
had it so easy. Same thing with me. There's an age gap between me and my siblings, right? There's three of them. And then there's 5 years in between them, me and my little brother. And the three of them always say, y'all two had it so easy, whatever, because the babies are the babies. So that first round of being parents, you're learning all the things. And so you're really strict. And Levi couldn't touch the remote. Levi could dare him touch our phone. And it was like, whoa, it was like flying out of his
Mhm.
hand. He couldn't do anything. But even in the disciplining, um, we've had some learning curves because you and I learned that we a lot of times were just reacting in the
Yeah.
discipline of him versus responding in a healthy way of correction, as you mentioned. And so there have been some steps that we were like, man, I will not spank him right away anymore. We are
Right.
100% for spanking, but we have kind of restructured this idea in our minds of we really need to do a healthier job in ourselves
Yeah.
so he can have a healthy relationship with discipline as well.
Yeah. Again, discipline, it doesn't need to be a penalty.
Right.
And I've been guilty at making that a penalty in the past. And that's not
Yeah.
what we're after long
Mm-hmm.
term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's really important to sometimes it can be a restructure. And I'll even share the example. Whenever it comes time for spankings for our kids, I will let you know what we do. So we have a spot. It's actually inside your closet
Hmm.
that once they do something wrong, we tell them, okay. And typically they do have warnings. We say, okay, tomorrow I want to see this different, whatever. So it's not like first time and first offense, and then they were already getting a spanking.
That does happen.
It
but
does.
Yes.
It does. Yeah, of course. But typically, my day to day is more of these
Sure.
behavior tweaks that need to take place. So I tell them, walk to, let's go get a spanking. And so their whole minds, the whole time they're walking from wherever we are to your closet, they are already like, they're starting to panic, right? And then they put their hands on your bar
Uh-huh.
of your jeans, and then we grab a belt, then we get a spanking, then we sit there for a minute and we talk, and then we hug and we solve.
Yeah.
And so it's this process that we kind of nailed down. They were like, this is healthy for me as a mom in this disciplining moment. It was healthy for you as a dad,
It was.
because we sometimes don't even recognize how heavy our hands are. Sometimes we don't have a belt, but in the big picture, it's been a healthy transition. And so this wasn't but maybe 4 years ago that we came up with this.
Yeah.
And so just be encouraged that even if you have failed time and time again, and not to say that we haven't failed since, that's 100% also not the case. But just having a structure, like having a thought, a pattern of what it is that you do, because it's also important to know what to expect, I feel like.
Yeah, and when we're heated,
Yeah.
we can be needing to get above the moment, right?
Mhm.
So how do we get to that 10,000-foot view in a quick moment? And I think that walk to the bedroom
Yeah.
is an opportunity for us to get above and understand, why are we as parents
Mhm.
walking back there?
Mhm.
We're there in the moments
Yeah.
of creating this correction mentality versus, we're just here to give you a spanking,
Yeah, for sure. For
because
sure.
of something you did.
For sure. And now moving on to the next one, I think that's important to also mention, is kids' activities. And now thinking about the time that's committed to outside of your home, right? That we're talking about being engaged, and we're talking about the moments of discipline. Now thinking about the activities that our kids are involved in parenting, I think is also really important for us to consider our kids in those things. And for example, whenever Levi wanted to start playing soccer, he was 5. He started asking, can I play soccer? Can I play soccer? Titus was just born, and we just kept putting it off, primarily because we didn't want to, if you do this, no big deal. I'm just saying, for us, we didn't want to spend time having him watch, chase dragonflies or whatever out on the soccer field because of time. We've always been really cautious of how we spend our time. And it wasn't until he turned 7 that we committed to, okay, now he's been asking for 2 years. I feel like it's time. But with where he plays, the commitment level, the all the things that we have to do for him at 12 years old, it always has been something that we tell him, Levi, this is something that you want. We are supporting you. And I recently read a book called Late Bloomers. And this book is talking about the pressure in the American culture to be a superstar and be an early riser. The praise of the younger, the better. All of the rich and famous that are under 20 nowadays with technology that we can make all your millions, whatever. But that, and then also the scores, the ACTs and the universities, the top degrees, the early graduation, early whatever, all of these performances and these activities for kids that sometimes we just put way too much pressure, unnecessary pressure on
Right.
kids to perform.
And so I think what we're trying to define here is that parental support.
Yeah.
So inside any activity that our kids are going to want to be a part of or are not going to want to be a part of, that we as parents support them.
Yeah.
We support them for their decisions, whether we like it or not. Obviously, there's moments where we're not wanting them to just turn on a dime if they've invested a lot. There's those practical steps that each one of us would need to walk out. Again, anytime we're talking in these series, life is fluid. Life is not black and white. There's a lot of color. You might be thinking, well, you don't understand, my kids are this or this. And yes, we are not here to say, hey, this one shoe size fits every
Right.
situation, but we are here to say, as parents, we want to fight for that engagement, fight for that healthy discipline or correction, and now fight for that support.
Mhm.
So when we're fighting for support, then what are we doing? We're coming together as husband and wife, or even maybe it's a single parent
Mhm.
home.
Mhm.
You still would want to come to the consensus of how am I supporting my children, my their emotional well being,
Mhm.
their spiritual well-being, their physical,
Mhm.
mental, everything there is so powerful because again, what they get here in the home, they're not going to get anywhere else. If they're not getting it from the home, they're seeking it everywhere
Mhm.
else.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so as we live in our lives and we get involved in these crazy activities that yes,
Mhm.
it does spend a lot of time that we sacrifice for our firstborn that we
Yeah.
haven't yet for our other two. And that doesn't mean we're showing the other two less support. We're showing this first one that has made this decision and keeps making this
Yeah.
decision that we're going to support his choices as long as he understands his actions
Mhm.
are also speaking to those things. If
Yeah.
he's going to work hard on and off the field, then we're going to support that.
Right.
If he's not, then time will show.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to that relationship that we talked about, that engagement. I remember whenever I was, gosh, I can't remember, maybe 7 or 8, I used to take piano lessons back home in Brazil. And I remember going to my parents and saying, "Hey, I don't want to play piano anymore." And my mom was crushed because she saw something in me, right? She saw this gift and she's like, "I refuse to let her waste it." But there was a deal that she made with me. She said, "Okay, you can quit piano, but you can replace it with a different instrument." And I thought that was a really healthy way of
Mm,
saying, "Okay, I honor your request. I hear you. I see that maybe this is not something that you want to pursue right now. So let's just switch." And then maybe she thought that I was bored with that one instrument. So then I picked up a different instrument and I played it for another 2 years and, met other friends and participated in other activities. But then going back to the piano, that was a route that I've always had in my life. When we moved to America, I was able to use that little talent, the little lessons that I had taken over the course of a year and help my parents in their Brazilian church. And I played there for years. And then also at my church, whenever I was an adult, right? I was part of the
right.
worship team for years. And so my point is to really listen. My mom really listened to what I asked her
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
She honored my voice. And I feel now, even looking back, I can tell my parents, thank you for listening to that you saw something in me that as a kid I probably didn't fully see, but that I've been able to enjoy in different seasons of my life and build a lot of friendships because of that one thing that mom and dad saw in me. And so same thing with your kids. Maybe it's not going to be like, I'm not a professional musician and neither will I ever be, but it did place me in situations that were really good, very
Mhm.
life giving in my life. So, thinking of our kids, maybe it's not something that is going to, they're not going to go pro just because you see that they're really fast or whatever. Just having the heart to say, okay, I'm engaged enough to be right here with you. Let's talk about this. Do you want to quit? And in our competitive nature, that you're like, man, you're so good though. You score all the goals. But then they say, I don't like it anymore. That we can lay down our pride. I don't know if it's pride, but just say, okay, like I don't agree with it, but maybe we can try something else, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, I think as parents, we want the best for our children, and sometimes that best can be, it can change to
Yeah.
where at what point do we want it, and
Yeah.
they stopped wanting it.
Hmm.
Life, other things, friends, girls. In our instance,
Yeah.
as the boys get older, those things change their trajectory or their mind or even desires, and so I think we as parents need to make sure that we are watching to be that support, to be
Hmm.
that aid in their life. That
Hmm.
I love what you said. Hey, maybe the piano's not it, but she didn't divert completely off. She
Yeah.
kept the topic of instrument
Yeah.
up there,
Yeah.
but she still supported your decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's very powerful.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And so I think that with all of this that we're saying is just remaining engaged enough, and not only with your kids, but primarily with one another.
Mm-hmm.
That you shut the door, that you of course it's important to have conversations in front of your kids, but when it comes to these topics that you're having to readjust and realign, maybe date night isn't even the right scenario because you want to make it about each other. But setting aside time that after the kids go to bed, you go somewhere and you shut the door and you can have these conversations. Hey, I'm not liking X, Y, or Z, whether it's something that, is being reactive or that needs to be more communicated with one another, of the way that, like how we were disciplining our kids, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're being too rough. This is not where we need to go, that we sat down and talked about these things.
Right.
So just making sure that, every week we say this, you are two different people and you have two different perspectives. So make sure that you're prioritizing these communications about parenting, because you really have to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So you can continue to fight for one another, for your marriage, for good parenting, so you can raise lifelong learners together.